the director Mike Leigh and the star Timothy Spall. Good evening.
Good evening.
I wanted to start actually by reading words that you, Mike Leigh, have written yourself, where you say, "I have turned the camera around on ourselves, we who try to be artists with all the struggles our calling demands." Tell me why coming back to an artist and coming to Mr. Turner interested you.
Well, I think he interests me anyway, apart from the thing of turning the camera around on us. I think the paintings are where I started, which are fantastic, and I've spent a long time really enjoying them and loving them, really. And it just seemed that to me that there was a story to be told about the painter, especially when I just started to find out about him. Fascinating guy, really. For me, what's interesting is when I talk about turning the camera around, and it's the thing we did on Topsy Turvy as well.
Yes.
It's just that people are people, and a job of work's a job of work. And this is a film about a guy who rolls up his sleeves and, does the down and dirty business of doing it, really. And so, of course, you could say it's about a genius, it's about a clairvoyant in some way, but actually the real thing is a person like we are, and I think what's interesting about, why I'm driven to make films anyway, is to look at people, at real people, the way we are,
So I wanted to talk actually to Tim Spall, who today won the New York Film Critics Circle Award for Best Actor.
How kind of you, thank you.
And we in New York think that's a much larger award than winning the Best Acting Award at Cannes. It's much bigger here in New York.
Well, whatever it is, I don't mind. It was a great surprise. I had no idea that it was coming my way. I had no idea that I was in the frame, because I certainly didn't have fill in an application form. So to be told that I'd won an award was an absolute delight. And the New York Film Critics Awards they're an august body. So
they are an august body.
Yeah.
Yeah. So speaking of august bodies, Mr. Turner was a member of the Academy. He ruffled people. How did you learn to embody this guy who is both cantankerous and mean sometimes, and not caring about other people's feelings, and yet having such great heart?
Well, the way that Mike works is, I think it's documented that we use a huge amount of improvisation, and Mike sets you the task to create a character from zero up to creating a person, and so the whole rehearsal process is not a rehearsal, because there isn't a script to rehearse. It's a process of creation, right from nothing to what you see the finished subject. Mike's genius as the dramatist and as the person in charge of this exercise is to ask you to bring a great deal, to collaborate with him, and to embrace with him the idea of making a film about someone's life. So you spend a lot of time on the nitty-gritty of what this person is and trying to embody it rather than impersonate it.
And this began with your learning to paint.
It started. I phoned Mike because I was sitting outside this pub in central London in Covent Garden, feeling a bit sorry for myself. And I looked up, and there was a plaque up, and it said, J.M.W. Turner was born here in 1775 above his father's barber shop. And I remember Mike had mentioned to me that he had this idea, and I phoned him up. He wasn't there, but then he phoned me back and said, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm just wandering around, failing to be enigmatic." And he said, "Come in." And so I went up to his office. He said, "You know, I was telling about that. It's a coincidence you should be sitting outside, because that's going to be my next film. And would you do me the great favour, because it's not going to be for 3 years, of learning how to paint?" So I said, "Yeah." And I did. And I was taught by a great guy. I got up to the standard of Turner when he was about 8 or 9.
Months old.
Fun?
Months old.
Yeah, 8 or 9 months old, yeah. But it was all an exercise in learning how to hold a brush and how to look like you've been born with something in your hand. Obviously, metaphorically, not literally, because it would have been very uncomfortable for his mother. But if somebody who was somebody who'd been around paint, literally from the point they could walk.
And yet there's a very specific physicality to what you're doing. Well, you know what? Let's take a look at a clip first and get a sense of Mr. Turner amongst his peers, and then we'll talk further about your technique, art technique, life in general. It's like you're covering all of society in that one room. There's the entire breadth of what it means to be an artist in that room, or an artist of that kind.
Yeah, it was a club, and at that time, there were no women. There were when it started in the 18th century, a few, but at this stage, and later, of course, there were. So it was a club. The interesting thing is that people assume that Turner was the only working class person with working class, but he wasn't. Actually, quite a lot of them were. A lot of them were from artisan backgrounds, weren't they? But it was a club, And Turner was both an insider, wasn't he, and an outsider. He was very much part of it. He'd been admitted when he was 14, so he was very much part of the thing. But at the same time, they all knew he was better. You could see them respecting him, deferring to him.
Yeah, I think it's sort of the old saying that I'd rather have had him inside the tent pissing out than outside pissing in, really,
One of the things that's striking in the movie is his relationship to his father, and the intensity of that, and what it meant to him, practically more than anyone else in his life, it would appear.
Indeed, that is in fact true. Yeah, I think that a lot of that came out of how we, about fact. I mean, it is written in many different books, biographies, that they did have this very special relationship. And it was also written that he was completely heartbroken at his death. Quite a lot of the relationship was revolved around a character who's not actually in this, as far as I'm concerned. And we talked about her a lot, and she informs a lot about their relationship and a lot about how Turner internally is made, and that's his mother. She's only really referred to on his father's deathbed, but she was an enormous influence on him through the lack of her ability, poor thing, because she would have been diagnosed as being having a very serious mental condition, which would have been helped through drugs, but then she was just known as a raving lunatic. And they actually eventually had her incarcerated in St. Beverly Hem's Hospital, which is Bedlam. And I think this relationship caused the big scar in him that was also the motor for another motor within this implosive soul he had.
Because you could also see his relationship to women was troubled, let's say, in all of them.
I think it's...
Not in all of them, no.
No, yeah. except for Mrs. Yes, except for the lovely, warm relationship he had with...
Mrs. Booth.
That's the one.
Yeah, I think he was a very uncompromising man in many different ways, and a very, it's your job, especially when you're working with Mike, to create a character that's got all of its faults on display as much as its attractive qualities. When you work with Mike, your job is to serve the character. serve it absolutely with all of its foulness as well as its glory. And that was one of the very intriguing, challenging things, that we were encountering a man of massive contradiction.
And one of the ways you express it, as you will see, has been pointed out, is through the guttural sounds that he makes that are not exactly language, but they are almost like emissions of what's going on inside of him.
Yeah, exactly. I think they grew organically as we were developing the character, that it's somebody who could say a million things but doesn't say anything. If anything, he's feeling it. It's a representation of somebody feeling a million things, but there's not enough for him to be able to say. So, in a sense, that's his emotional language. His intellectual language is actually via his hand and his paint rather than anything.
Speaking of his hand and his paint, let's take a look at this other clip, which you will see, the hand at work. Did your teacher teach you to spit?
No, that came naturally, yeah.
Well, Turner, we know that Turner did spit and do all that stuff and blow mysterious brown powder, and it came from that in the first place.
Tell me about the music, which is extraordinary and is so much a part of the film. Topsy Turvy obviously was built on the music of Gilbert and Sullivan, but this is an entirely different way of using music to emphasize.
Yes, I mean, obviously with Topsy Turvy, as you say, the music was the music that was the music of the period, indeed of the work. I felt very strongly that this film needed to have a contemporary score that wasn't faux period music. I mean, there is the Purcell that he sings, the Beethoven that's played in that scene, and the Rossini that's sung in the next scene. But it felt that it needed a different sort of sound. Gary Yershon is a great composer. He's done the music for all my more recent films. And he agreed. And who could have thought that the score for a period film about Turner, that the principal sound would be 5 saxophones, because that's what it is. And I think it's a wonderful score. One of the important things about it, apart from the sound itself, which somehow comes out of the sense of the spirit of Turner, his paintings, is also that we're quite spare with it. It's not slapped all over the film like so many movies do, like vinaigrette dressing. I mean, it's spare, and it doesn't happen all the time, so that the silences are important, and the music, when it happens, earns its keep.
It does become like an oral projection of what that kind of painting is like. It's just brilliantly mixed together there. I wanted to read another piece of your statement here. Mr. Turner is about the tensions and contrasts between this very mortal man and his timeless work, between his fragility and his strength. It is also an attempt to evoke the dramatic changes in his world over the last quarter century of his life. In Topsy Turvy, you also managed to talk about the changing world through the course of what these musicians were about. Tell me, could you talk a little bit more about that?
Well, actually, I thought you were going to say, in Topsy Turvy, they're kind of fascinated by telephones and fountain pens and those things. And here Turner is confronted by photography, and trains start running during the course of the film.
And spectrum of light and
time. I went to the Reykjavik Film Festival a few weeks ago, and they took us, some filmmakers, took us out around Iceland, and we went to this place where the tectonic plates didn't connect. You've been, obviously. And that area there between the tectonic plates is where the Vikings used to have their parliament 1,000 years ago. And we were talking about this, and they said, they used to come from all over the island and have the parliamentary, hold the parliament. And I said, how did they know when to come? And out of the discussion that then took place, we wound up asking ourselves the following question, which was, how did we make films 20 years ago when we didn't have cell phones? How did we do anything before there were cell phones? How did we do anything before computers? How did anyone achieve anything? And I'm talking about something that many of us here are old enough to have seen all those changes happen apparently quite recently. So I'm fascinated by the way that life changes, things change, just by the sheer speed of progress and development. And that is something that is going on in this film because it runs from 1825 to 1851. And although there are a whole bunch of other things happening, and the central event is Turner growing older and becoming more radical in his painting and various things happening to him doing various things. Nevertheless, that sense of change, that fluid picture that we've made of that change happening is an important implicit element in the film.
There's also a beautiful scene where there is an in-the-house concert and there's a girl singing, and the audience is as engaged as if we were watching the most spectacular action movie. That was the entertainment of the night.
Yes.
And the words or the naughtiness of some of the lyrics just made grown men laugh and be completely thrilled. And that was such a specific little detail to show what
the entertainment was.
Exactly. I would imagine that you shot many more scenes than we see here.
No, actually.
No?
There are one or two. No, pretty much what we shot is what you see, really.
Because the specifics of when you see a woman playing a keyboard or when you see that music adds an entirely different aspect to Turner than seeing him painting. Was there anything that was hard to capture for you that you were just not satisfied with?
It's a difficult question. I don't know. I mean, I don't know what the answer to that is. Is there anything?
Well, I think because of the budgetary restraints, you wanted to go to Venice.
Yes.
Didn't you? Yeah. I mean, it's remarkable. I think that, when the only way I can be objective about this is look at the film as a whole. I can't be objective about my thing in it. But this film, we had to. I don't know whether I'm allowed to say how much it cost, but it cost under.
It cost £8.5 million.
Yes, about $11 million, which, and nowadays for something with a cast of 70, a period piece, and something that is so beautifully shot technically, is quite remarkable. And I think, in a sense, the whole fact that the film exists the way it does is a bit of a miracle. So, and what Mike's genius has done really in the way he's realised it is that you don't know what the heart doesn't see, the mind doesn't grieve about, whatever the saying is. I can't remember what it is, but I think you get the gist.
Now, you have worked together on 5 films?
6 films and 1 theatre play, yeah.
At this point, can you give a certain raise of an eyebrow and you would understand, or the other way around? Is there a shorthand communication that...
I think, without trying to sound mystical or in any way misleading about this, the privilege and the pleasure of working with somebody over a long time, and it happens always with the way that Mike runs the preparation for a film, is that because he gets everybody to pull so assiduously on the same rope and think as much as possibly on the same subject, that there is, and I'm not going to be mystical about that, grows a kind of telepathy, because everybody is pretty much aware on what this elusive thing we're looking for is. So there is a kind of telepathy that happens within it. And I suppose if you've been doing it for 33 years, okay, not every day, but there's going to be a certain amount which I wouldn't be able to pinpoint exactly, but I don't know is the answer.
And then going into it, when you are first starting to explore finding your way into Mr. Turner, did you take wrong turns that you first thought, oh, it's going to be like this, and then you realized this is not working?
Well, can I answer that? This is, with any character working the way we do, it's complex. With this character, it's very complex indeed. So, it's experimental. It's truly experimental, and therefore, by definition, experimental means right turns and wrong turns and trying things, and some things work and some things fall by the wayside and other things grow into other things, and so that's what it's about. And of course, all of this film, the whole of this film, like all of my films, which start life with no script, and there never is actually a document called a script, though it's what we arrive at is very precise in what we shot through rehearsal. But because it does come out of improvisations, by definition, that is a whole bunch of wrong turns and right turns, because that's what an improvisation is.
Yeah, and to illustrate that, really, what presented itself, and is only really working in this way, and with Mike's invention, that you can triumph over something that was originally, the more we discovered about Turner, the more contradictory he was, and the more contradictory reports there was of him. What was at first seemingly an impediment actually presented itself as the simple point of the fact that he was a man of absolute contradictions, that he was this character that was the manifestation of contradiction, which in the end led to what he could create. So it's only really working in that way of Mike's invention, Mike's bottle and bravery to experiment and allow you to make mistakes, that you would push through the impediment into realizing that's the whole fact of it.
I think we can open this to some questions if we have any, and we have people on the floor who will be able to help us with microphones.
Hi, how are you? First,
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
I'm really honored to meet you.
Ask the question.
I love British people. So I have both, question for both. First, Mike, your movie is always fantastic. I love Secrets and Lies and Bella Drake. So I believe so many people. You inspired so many people. But who inspired you? Like, or your imagination, original, then sorry, I have a question for you too.
Okay,
sorry,
one at a time.
So how many questions do you want?
Okay, quickly. You look by the sharp. You look like a winner, and you won best, actor. Say congratulations. Yeah.
Oh, thank you very much.
Then sorry, I'm Japanese. I heard you went to Japan for Last Samurai. Then you spoke Japanese too. How was making, movie
Okay,
in Japan?
so we're going to do
Thank
one
you so
question
much.
at a
Thank you.
time.
You answer your question first.
I can answer that simply. We went to Japan very briefly on The Last Samurai, and I did have to do an entire speech, which is about 23 lines in Japanese, but it took me 6 weeks to learn them. And as soon as I'd done the scene, I can't remember any of it. So again, it's the old saying, there's nothing like the knowledge of being hanged in the morning to concentrate the mind wonderfully. So there you go.
Yes.
Ozu. That's the answer to your question. Who influenced me? Ozu. Okay. That's the
Okay,
answer to your
now-
question.
Elaborate, please.
And one or two others, but there's not enough time to recite the whole list. So we'll just stick at Ozu.
Can you explain a little how?
Well, you know his films. I mean, he makes films about people and their ordinary lives, and he finds the profound drama in that, in those stories.
Hey, thanks for being here. The trailer, the cinematography is beautiful. I wonder if you could just talk a little bit about your process working with your cinematographer.
Yes, Dick Pope's the cinematographer. He's a brilliant master cinematographer. He shot every film I've made since Life is Sweet, which Tim and I made together in 1990. We had a long time to think about this film because it took a long time to get it together and raise the money. We talked about it a lot. It was obvious that the film needed to implicitly have the look, the feel, the atmosphere, the colours, the palette, the tones of Turner. And so we absorbed a lot. We were fantastically lucky when we shot the film, because shooting films in England is a hazardous business. If you've been to England, you know the weather is very unpredictable because you know, there's all kinds of things go on around the British Isles, but we were extremely lucky, and the light was fantastic whenever it needed to be. And of course, we shot the film with a digital camera, and Dick Pope was able to do some very magical things, particularly in post-production, which enhanced the very brilliant things that he'd shot naturally.
Besides examining the life of an artist and analyzing or illuminating what an artist goes through, you've also examined the process of aging. And so both of you have done films which have looked at how people have aged and whether it's been a successful experience or there's decay. Can you talk a little bit about why that fascinates you and about some of the films that you've addressed?
Do you think you are sufficiently decayed?
Yeah, I do, yes,
I didn't say you were decaying.
No, but I have been around for a few decades. And so why it fascinates me more and more is because I'm getting older, basically. I mean, look, the serious answer to the question is, you know, I try and make films about life, which is about living and dying and growing old and being babies and having babies and having children and being parents and parents dying and, you know, wanting children and not wanting them and all kinds of stuff and work and surviving and, you know, sex and all kinds of things that our life is about. And one of the things that life is about is growing old. But I've also made films about being young, you know. To me, it's all out there to explore, really.
I was just saying, growing old if you're lucky, because a lot of people don't. You know, so I've always thought, rather than lamenting about getting old, it's always better than the alternative, unless you're in agony.
I'm fascinated by the no-script start of your films. Do you start with any kind of structure, or do you give the actors objectives, actions? How does that evolve?
Well, before we start shooting, I work out a broad structure, but that's after we've spent months working on the characters and relationships. With this film, of course, the structure takes its cue from the actual events of Turner's life. But in the end, it's about going on location and making a film up as we go along, though according to, you know, some general sense of a structure. But it's there that structure is there to challenge and change, and because the important thing, like any piece of art of any kind, is the actual moment of creation of the actual thing itself. The preparation is only the scaffolding. In terms of a script, as I've said, we don't have a script in the conventional sense, but what we arrive at, scene by scene, location by location, is something that's very precise, so that what I take to the cutting room, the editing suite, is a whole lot of raw material, but that is pretty precise and has its own built-in logic and structural considerations. So in other words, just the real bottom line is, people talk about, you know, the screenplay, working on a screenplay. A screenplay is only a screenplay. We don't make a screenplay, we make a film. And the film is the thing. Just as this building we're in, there are somewhere some architect's plans for this building. But if you look at the building, you don't say, you don't start thinking about what the plans were like, you think about the building, really. And that's what we do, make a film.
Thanks. Obviously, the sea is terribly important for Turner, and I'm really interested in the location that you chose. And I know it, and I haven't ever been to Margate, so I'm just interested in what you would say about the location.
You've never been to Margate?
I've never been to Margate, but I think I know the place that it was shot.
Where was it shot?
Kingsand in Cornwall.
Very good, well done.
We go there on holiday a lot.
Okay.
It's a lovely place, isn't it? Yeah, it's very nice.
We actually, I mean, people that know Margate will look at the film and say, It's a very good film and everything, but this bears no resemblance to Margate. You can't film in Margate. It wasn't practical. Turner went there because of the light, and we felt the light in King's Sand was very good. But yeah, I think you've answered your own question. That's where it was, yes.
But also, the Margate now doesn't look anything like the Margate of then. Margate has developed over the years, and it's become a big, it's a rather broken down, once very popular seaside resort. I mean, it's re-emerging now, ironically, because it's got the Turner Centre. It's got a gallery there, which is obviously an homage to him, but it's also where he worked. And I mean, there still is amazing light in Thanet. It's just that, as I say, Margate does not look like. So we had to find somewhere that looked like Margate then, you know.
Vaguely.
Vaguely, yeah.
Hi there. My question is regarding the improvisation. Being that this was a historical, real character, real person, was there any restrictions regarding how far you were, as an actor, allowed yourself to go with the improv? And also, regards to the director, did you allow the actors, how far did you let the actors go with regards to the improvisation without losing who really Mr. Turner was and how you want the character to be?
You know, the fact is this. You can research for 1,000,000 years. You can read everything that was ever written about it. But you've still got to make it come to life in an organic way in front of the camera. So don't get confused by the notion of the improvisation. It's not about randomly ad-libbing a script. It's about a way of bringing characters to life in a real way and in a three-dimensional way. And part of what happened with this particular project was that the actors, Tim not least, are very good at getting the spirit, the feel of 19th century language. I mean, Tim has actually read a lot of Dickens. He's actually good at 19th century. And a lot of these actors, you know, so they could get into character and actually improvise in a pretty accurate way. But then we never film improvisations. We then work on the script through rehearsal and arrive at something that's very precise. And my job is to make sure that the language, even if we're making a contemporary film, it's still to make sure the language is accurate, both from a dramatic and from a character and also from a social or cultural point of view. So the point about the improvisation is it's not a question of random things happening or it going off at tangents. It's a way of making it solid and real, and from which we can then distill something that is precise.
I just want to say again, congratulations to Tim Spall today for the award that you've gotten. Thank you to Mike Leigh and Timothy Spall for coming
Well, I
here.
certainly wouldn't have got it without this gentleman's...
Well, good team.
No, but
I
certainly wouldn't have made the film without him in it. So there you go.
It's love. Thank you so much.